Hey everyone, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts, number 414, Spoils of Agriculture. I'm Exterminator, and thank you for joining me. And this is pretty interesting. It's good. It's part of it's pretty much exactly what I expected, and part of it is something I did not expect at all. So this, of course, is a add-on to last week's, essentially, or a continuance, going into more of the details of what we're going to find and have to do on Gleba, right? That they revealed last week. So this is written by V, and we're just going to hop right in here. So, with the idea of being a biological planet full of life, it seems reasonable to expect our engineers about to harvest some of that. We already have ways of harvesting nature, specifically trees, on Novice, right? But it isn't really that useful. You just hit them with an axe, and then the wood does almost nothing except make power poles and boxes for you to blow up and burn. Yeah, I guess it's fuel too, but overall, not super useful, right? And it's all manual basically until you get bots. However, on Gleba we have an actual automated way to do it, which is awesome. And this is kind of exactly what I was thinking last Friday Facts. Like, I'm not saying I was the only one. I think there were a ton of people thinking this. But I was mentioning, like, I didn't really see any new resources on the ground, so my theory was that you actually harvest kind of the planet itself, or in this case, I guess, parts of it, like the nature itself, right? And we get this agricultural tower, which is pretty sweet. It says it's a work in progress, which is fine. I mean, I think it looks pretty good. It looks maybe a little too much, just like a inserter potentially, but I'm not going to complain. Even if it looks just exactly like this, I really won't complain. But it's yeah, it's a new machine unlocked on Gleba, and it automatically harvests trees in its range. There are two plants on Gleba which are specifically interesting, as they can be not just harvested but also replanted by the tower. Today we'll have a look at one of them. Okay, so you can see we're getting some fruit of some sort, and then this is like seeds coming back in here for it to replant, of course, which is super nice. And by the looks of this, I would say it's maybe, I don't know, what would this be, like 5 by 5, 7 by 7 range potentially, or maybe it's a circle for all we know. And then we can see, yeah, they say that the things here are subject to change, right? Harvesting a plant yields fruit, which can be processed in an assembly machine into usable products and seeds. So we see that the fruit comes in here, and we're basically getting like some sort of processed fruit and then seeds as well back out from this. Fruit being processed in an assembly machine results in seeds and mash. Oh, so this is, okay, so this is what this is, mash. I did read this. I just didn't read this specifically, this part. But seeds can then be put back into the agriculture tower to seed a new plant. The plant will grow over time, and when it matures, the agriculture tower will automatically harvest it. So it's super nice. It's like fully automated, basically. It'll plant it for you, and then when it's ready to be harvested again, it'll do it, right? So you don't have to keep marking it for decon with bots or anything like that. It's a very automated way to process this stuff, which is really nice. Now, each plant is seeded with a 3-tile gap from each other, resulting in a square pattern. This contributes to the entire process feeling artificial, like a plantation rather than just wild nature, which, again, is great. It goes into the whole feeling and vibe and kind of just general gameplay. Factorio is, you know, we are creating these very artificial manufactured things. So you know, going from harvesting it where it's naturally displayed in nature to, you know, like a I can't read, orchard. Oh dear, it's too early for me. And seeds can, yeah, so it's really nice. The agricultural plants can only be seeded on very specific tiles, so you'll need to obey some environmental conditions. As you can probably guess, though, this is Factorio, so we'll be sure to let you Rexa said environment with special land fill like soils you'll be able to develop with just a better research. Oh, well, that's great to know. I'm very happy. And you'll notice some like white line stuff here. They go into this later. I actually thought this was like some new like display bar for the inserters, but I didn't notice it over here. So yeah, this is a new mechanic, which is the part that I did not expect, right? And we can see kind of just some different usage of this. So this is it, like, so this is harvesting, and then it's doing some replanting too. We have seeds here, so this is pretty cool. Now what I'm interested in, so you can see this like growing. I'm curious on what the timetable actually is on this. Like, is it a day, like a Factorio in day? Is it like 5 days? I'm just kind of curious. Not that it massively matters, but I mean, it does matter a little bit, like how you want to scale this. I do really like the retractable part of this, though. That's pretty sweet. And then large-scale farming using artificial soil. So this is the artificial soil, I think, which you can kind of tell the difference, right? Like this is the natural, and then this stuff does not really match that. And you can see, I mean, I guess this is growing pretty quick. I mean, the animate, like, the way this looks with the growing is actually pretty dang sweet. So we now come down to the biochamber, and this is where things get really interesting, right? So we come down and we say every planet we have presented so far as a unique crafting structure. Here on Gleba is a biochamber. It is used to process all the planet's fruits into more industrial products like carbon fiber or a mysterious material we call bioflux. More on that later. I would assume bioflux is maybe this like green stuff. Or on this side, I suppose. And a tiny bit of biochamber processing. The core of biochamber is that it needs to be fed nutrients to operate. Unlike the foundry and electromagnetic plant, the biochamber isn't really used for any novice recipes, but it has its own set of recipes which basically replace oil processing on this planet. So this is super interesting for a couple reasons. Number one, it kind of makes me think that you wouldn't necessarily want to be even bringing this back to novice, whereas like the electromagnetic plant and the foundry are things you could totally bring back to novice to, you know, bump up your main production there. And my original assumption was maybe we want still all of our like end product, like science pack product, to be produced on novice and be bringing stuff back, or maybe you would want to make it on the individual planets and bring it back, and but like have your labs and stuff on novice. But this kind of maybe changes it, and that is even further kind of built upon with this next mechanic, which is spoilage, right? So all the time you're probably asking yourself, or already posting messages about before reading further, what are the weird white lines in the images above? Which is, you don't see it so much here, but like that's what this stuff was, right? Is these lines on the fruit. And this is where things are really interesting. I was truly not expecting this. So now we're getting into what makes Gleba really special. When fruit is harvested or most other biological products are made, it will eventually spoil, which turns into a new item called spoilage. Looks disgusting, which it's supposed to. This process is inevitable and can't be delayed. However, different items have different spoil times, ranging from about 2 hours to mere minutes. This means that there are ways to control the mechanic and optimize for getting a less spoiled product in the end. And you can see them here moving along, some more spoiled than others. Now, I have a lot of thoughts with this, but I'm going to finish reading it. The reason why you're optimizing for a better product is because recipe results inherit their freshness from the ingredients, which is interesting, something I didn't really consider, but I guess it makes sense now. This means that when you craft a product out of 30% spoiled ingredient, the product will also be 30% spoiled, right? Like you can't make fresh salads with moldy lettuce. Effectively, the spoilable items need to be perceived as temporary, and it's the throughput that matters, while in contrast, buffering a stockpile isn't helpful at all. So finally, all of my rants in the past about over buffering will actually be even more relevant, because if you over buffer, you're going to have a real bad time. When we were considering the idea of time life for items, one of the first questions was whether they should just disappear or turn into something. If they just disappeared, it would be more convenient, as you wouldn't need to worry about the pile of spoilage you're inevitably going to accumulate, but you wouldn't know that something had spoiled, as there would be no traces of it. That's why spoilage exists, and we have multiple methods to get rid of it. You can burn it, waste it in a recycler, or create nutrients that are already half spoiled. Okay, so I guess if you use nutrients that are half spoiled, which is this white stuff, so that's what's being fed in here. I'm not sure quite how that would work. I mean, I guess if the nutrients half spoiled, that means the resulting product would also be partly spoiled. You can see the new science packs here too. And then we come down to, so I guess this is just eventually, like, this is kind of just like outputting more spoilage, or, well, it's a smaller percent. Like, it's outputting spoilage again, so eventually I think it would just run through it all, so you probably would just want to burn it, especially because it looks like this can actually burn spoilage itself, because something's fueling this to burn it. So you're fueling it to burn itself, which is just a faster way to get the result, I think, with a recycler. To avoid this mechanic being over the top and to allow meaningful decisions to be made, there's some items where their freshness does not contribute to the final product, as the final product is something that isn't spoilable. So I'll be interested to see what those are, because I would have thought it's a science pack, but apparently it's not. So on the other hand, the new agricultural science packs do spoil, which reduces their value for research, so you will be incentivized to try to bring home the freshest science packs you can. And there are some other there are some items and recipes with spoilable ingredients which need to be crafted on different planets. So that's interesting. So on top of optimizing production chain, it'll also be meaningful to make a fast space platform delivers to them. So this is like this is going to be like pretty overwhelming, not necessarily in a bad way, but I think it's going to be kind of overwhelming because you have to like have all this interplanetary transport, which is the point. Like obviously we would probably be doing that anyway, but now when you actually add in a timed factor, like you have a countdown basically of I need to get these things here before they spoil type of thing, that's going to be really interesting. And then we go into the main tools for manipulating spoilables are inserters with a new ability to prioritize the freshest or the most spoiled items when picking up from inventories and filtering out spoilageable with splitters. So this is really nice. So this does make it better because this can help. So like you obviously probably don't want your science packs to be super spoiled. You want them to be quote unquote fresh. It sounds a little weird, but quote unquote fresh as possible. So you would want to be filtering your inserters to use only the freshest like ingredients for the science pack, and then splitters can filter out spoilable stuff, which is super nice. I really like this a lot. And then we come down to design journey. So, and I do have thoughts with this. I guess we can do that before we do in the design. So this is really interesting. I feel like this could be overall pretty good. I do have a few concerns. The first one being the science that spoils, because Factorio is up until now, a very kind of ratio-based game. Now, I don't know, maybe that wasn't even intentional, but what it is true that, you know, a lot of things are like ratio-based, right? Like if you want to make 100 science per minute, or like do research at 100 science per minute, I should say, then you build these builds to make that, and you know, you build X amount of this thing, X amount of this thing at these speeds to make sure all your science is made at 100 a minute and consumed at 100 a minute. But I can see that basically going out the window with this because all of your other science packs don't spoil, but these do. So how are you going to have a consistent amount of science per minute, or usable science per minute, I should say, right? Because you're still, I guess, producing these. You could produce them at the same rate as everything else, but if they're coming out spoiled and only worth 60% or 50% like towards actual science, then what's going to happen is you're going to be basically overproducing everything else because, you know, they contribute one like science tick per pack, whereas this could only contribute a half of one or a quarter of one or whatever, right? So that's my main concern with this, is it's going to just kind of throw all ratioing out the window for science, because I guess what you could do is just like insanely overproduce this to the fact, like, I don't know though. Like, I don't know how the spoilage levels, like if it's 100%, like none of these are coming out 100%. I guess it's because maybe they're not being made from 100%, like, or like they're already being made from somewhat spoiled materials is why they're coming out like this. But the point is, like, I guess you could just massively overproduce this, like produce double or something, just so you kind of account for the fact that when these go in a science lab, it's maybe only going to account for like half of a science cycle, whereas the others are accounting for a full one or something. But it's going to, of course, be varying based on the spoilage that may have happened on the way to the planet or just from ingredients or whatever. So that's kind of my main concern with this. I don't think it's like a huge deal, but it does kind of throw out like, oh, I just want to make 10,000 science per minute and consume 10,000 science per minute, because that's kind of gonna not work with this. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts with this. Like, what do you think generally of the spoilage mechanics, and also like the science pack specifically? Now, one thing someone said on Reddit, which is honestly definitely worth considering, is maybe you just want your labs on Gleba and transport everything else here, rather than transporting it back to Novice. Having them here, of course, removes the transport time from the science pack. And now it's possible they make you not be able to build it here, which would be really cruel. But, you know, that way at least you don't have to try to transport this, you know, like interplanetary transport. I think I still said wrong, for the science pack. But anyway, this is cool. Like I said, I didn't expect this. Like, I'm not against it at all. I think this will make some really interesting production change and situations. And there's still stuff we haven't seen. Like, my only other thing with this is I don't see anything like super good. And when I say good, I don't mean like well designed or anything. I mean good as in like powerful. Like on from Vulcanus we have the Foundry, and then from Fragora we have the E implant, and it's like these are things that you can use for other stuff, and they're insanely good. Like they are so much better than the base versions of like a furnace or an assembler. But here, the biochem plant really only does this stuff, and there's no reason to take it back to novice. So I'm still kind of waiting for like, why would you go to this planet until you need the science pack type of thing? Like the others, like I want a foundry, like ASAP, or I want an E implant ASAP. Now, obviously, you unlock other things too, like quality you unlock at different stages. So maybe like tier 3 quality or something, or legendary quality you don't get until you're on this planet, which would be kind of again cruel, but that can make sense for sure. And like I said, it's stuff they haven't shown, so I'm not going to jump to conclusions. But just based on what I've been given, I am kind of wondering like, what is the draw for this? Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, cool mechanics, planet looks super cool. I definitely will come here, but it's like, why would I like make any rush to come here if there's nothing that actually benefits my other production type of thing, right? So I'm just kind of curious to see what we see, what they reveal from that. I'm going to be patient and not really rush to any more conclusions until they show us more stuff. But yeah, so now that's my thoughts. I just wanted to share my thoughts, and then I want to hear your thoughts, whether they're kind of aligned with mine or contrasting or anything else you think with all this stuff. And then we come down lastly to the design journey. So I went through some drastic changes, right? Initially, they had about 10 plants which were harvested directly into items like plastic or sulfur, but it just became very broad, but shallow and tedious as a result. It is worth noting that it wasn't very interesting either, as that's basically how a mining drill works. Instead, we've produced it to 2 plants to cultivate, and their fruits are processing. Are processed to a much wider variety of items. Also, in much higher volumes, which restored the feeling of building a factory in the way we know and love, right? The seeds are not only useful for new plants, but also for creating biochambers and the seedable soil tiles, so there's some decisions to be made where you invest them. And I definitely can see, like, some pretty cool stuff with, like, mega bases where you just have these massive orchard production, or, like, orchard fields with production of, like, seeds coming in and out, stuff being replanted. Now, I am curious, someone else brought up, like, I'm curious how the spoilage thing is going to affect performance, because I can't imagine that that's, like, negligible when everything, like, when there's stuff that spoils at different rates, and, like, there has to be different levels for everything. Like, obviously things spoil at different rates, but regardless of the rate that it spoils, it's like, okay, well, it's either 20% spoiled or 50% or 80% or whatever the numbers are, but you have to track that for like everything. So I'm a little worried how this may impact performance, which maybe is another reason to not really do much on this planet until you have to. But again, I'm not going to jump to conclusions, and I don't want to downplay, like, this is super cool. This is really interesting. I'm really curious to see more, and I will come here, and I'm sure I will enjoy playing on it. So I don't want to downplay, like, the work they did or anything, because I think it is pretty cool, and they really threw a curveball with giving us the spoilage, which is, it's nice to be given something that we weren't expecting, right? And then we go down to the conclusion. So they're confident in the gameplay that Gleba is different enough to be interesting, yet builds on similar enough principles. The visuals are still subject to change, along with improvements to some effects. The graphics of the new machines you can see here come primarily from the usual suspects like Arendelle and Concept Art and Jersey taking care of the 3D pipeline. However, the tower has a very long telescope arm, much longer than any other legs or arms, which resulted in being very technically demanding to make, both for Jersey and for Lau, breaking their brains with the drawing code. The Biochamber was more straightforward, but Jersey had a field day with the crazy geometry nodes simulating. There's a lot more detail to be shared, but these will be easier to digest when you have the game in your hands or in some later Friday Facts. So, like I said, this is not everything. This is just kind of, I guess, like a glimpse of the main parts. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what else is with this. And then I saw some like speculations on Reddit that maybe if there's like the 4th planet is like an ice planet potentially, that maybe you could like bring things there to preserve and store them. But I don't think so, because the V said specifically in here, like very specifically said that there's no way to preserve or delay the spoilage. So I don't know, maybe that's just like a ploy to make us think that now until something else is revealed. But it really sounds like there's not really a mechanic to actually preserve them. It's kind of like you got to process these things ASAP if they spoil fast, and you know you can kind of put the rest on the back burner, as it were, or something like that. But that's gonna do it for this one. This was kind of a long one because I actually read like basically verbatim everything, but I think that was important to really get an understanding of kind of how this works and what's going on here. And as always, I would love your thoughts below. I kind of expect to see a lot of thoughts with this. I expect it to be kind of like the quality, where there's like people who really like it and then people who are very much against it, and you know, of course, people in between too. But I definitely expect it to be fairly split, but maybe I'll be wrong. I don't know. Let me know. If you did enjoy and are looking forward to at least some of this, definitely leave a like on the video. And if you are new and haven't subscribed yet, feel free to keep up with all future content. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.